Hi, welcome to this webinar, which will be about 20 to 30 minutes on sensory processing and music. My name is Wendy Burtnall, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Now, there are a lot of ways in which people will tell you that you can support or improve sensory processing, and so many of those ways are fantastic. This webinar, we want to really show you how you can improve sensory processing through music, not just by telling you the science and the research behind it, but rather by showing you what it's done for real people in real life. So I first want to start out by telling you the story of Paolo, who at the age of 13, his parents thought nothing was working to help him. He was so sensitive all the time. He wasn't brushing his teeth, overwhelmed on the bus, wasn't doing well in school, needed constant reminders to do things, and was really physically aggressive because of the sensory sensitivities that he had in his life. Now, they decided to try the listening program, and they were a little bit reluctant because, again, he was 13 and nothing seemed like it was working. And at the time, the parents thought, gosh, if none of these other things are working, why would we choose something else? But after even just the first session, which is 15 minutes, Dad was able to see changes in his son, and he felt like the investment was absolutely worth it. So after 15 minutes a day for 1 week, they saw that Paolo had changed drastically, and they were able to continue doing the program with him. He wasn't arguing anymore. He was brushing his teeth without hesitation. He was relaxed on the bus. He did his homework without arguing. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that his sensory sensitivities were being decreased, and so they weren't affecting his ability to show up in daily life in a way that he really wanted to. So let's talk a little bit about what he was using to be able to do that. Now, Paolo was using a portion of the listening program by Advanced Brain Technologies. Advanced Brain Technologies has been around since 1999. It's a scientifically based, natural, and very research-heavy program that allows people to improve overall brain function and brain health. Now, specifically, this webinar, we want to show you how it supports and changes and helps people with sensory processing. So let's get into a little bit about what sensory processing even looks like and what it's doing in the brain, so you can see how the music is supporting it. Now, we all know that there's overprocessing and underprocessing within sensory processing, and a person can be overprocessing and underprocessing in different senses. And this can lead to a lot of different behaviors. Now, there are so many different advertisements for sensory swings and weighted blankets and all the things that can be really helpful to help minimize a lot of these behaviors and minimize a lot of these results of underprocessing and overprocessing. Because what happens when the brain senses that there's an overprocessing or underprocessing happening because of a sensory stimulation, it triggers the fight or flight response. And in Paolo, we definitely saw that. The fight or flight response was coming out in his refusal to do homework, his hesitation to brush his teeth, his resistance to the bus, his aggressiveness. It was because he was triggered by these sensory sensitivities, and then this fight or flight response was then being signaled. Now, when this happens in the brain, it's important that we look to some kind of therapy that addresses two things that most don't. And I apologize that my face is in the way of this quote, but it says, this is a quote by Alex Doman, who is the founder of Advanced Brain Technologies. He says, once that neural pattern develops, it's important to think about a form of therapy that not only assists the brain with revisiting the way it processes those offensive sounds, but also with resetting its response to that stimulus. So really, it's a dual action kind of therapy. And that's exactly what the listening program does. It provides dual support in the brain. So it encourages restoration for more optimal responses to sensory stimuli. And it also encourages less intense emotional responses to the sensory stimuli. So basically for Paolo, that helped him to be able to tolerate the bus, complete his homework without resistance, to all of those things, which we were able to see him doing within just 1 week because the music was supporting both of those things. Now, that was kind of a little bit of technical language. For those of you who may not be professionals in the world of sensory processing, let me put it in a different way. Scientifically engineered music within the listening program can rewire those neural connections, which cause sensory sensitivities, which create new pathways resulting in less sensory sensitivity or less seeking behaviors. So it's coming in and helping the brain in 2 ways, by helping it not feel like it has to seek out or avoid all of these tendencies, and also decrease the response to those to that stimuli when they do encounter it. So how does that happen? We want to look at the science behind this because it's so important to know why it works. The listening program goes into and categorizes different programs within the listening program in terms of zones. Now, the specific program that Paolo used was called Spectrum. The listening program has 4 different programs within it, and Spectrum is one of them. This Spectrum program utilizes the green and the blue zones, as we just saw in this picture here, which are the lower frequency zones, which focus on emotional regulation to decrease the response, the negative response to that sensory stimuli, as well as improving sensory regulation to decrease the sensitivities or the seeking out of different stimulation. So that's what's really happening inside the Spectrum program by focusing on low frequency zones. And when it does that, Spectrum creates a healthy relationship with sensory stimuli by training the brain through pleasing evidence-based music, which can reduce sensory sensitivities and help people find comfort and safety in their environment. And that's exactly what we saw with Paolo. Other people who utilize the program are able to say that they've received these particular benefits: reduce stress, calm the sensory seeking or avoiding tendencies, quiet the body's alarm system or that fight or flight response, and really receive a lot of benefits from the listening program. Now, there's a lot of talk about the vagus nerve and what it is and what it does. And the listening program absolutely utilizes the vagus nerve to accomplish a lot of what it does within the Spectrum program. Now, Patty Andrich, she is an internationally honored occupational therapist, vision therapist, researcher, and author who also is a provider for advanced brain technologies, meaning she's a professional in her own field who utilizes the listening program in conjunction with her own therapy to maximize the benefits that her clients receive. So she's known worldwide for her research in treating children and adults with sensory processing disorders. And she utilizes the listening program because she knows how well it works. So she says, TLP's scientifically designed music improves the listener's ability to process sound frequencies in a way that leads to a sense of security, safety, and achievement. This approach provides the listener with a safe signal, priming the nervous system for success. Among the many cranial nerves that the TLP affects is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve system acts to counterbalance the fight or flight system and can trigger a relaxation response in our body. The body's vagus and other sensory motor nerves respond to the music, especially with simultaneous air and bone conduction stimulation. So basically what she's saying is that the vagus nerve is stimulated to help counteract that fight or flight response that can happen when a person comes into contact with a sensory stimulation that goes against what their body or brain is trying to do, which is really important. One of the things Patty mentioned in there was the bone conduction and air conduction. This is a really unique part about the listening program and something that Paolo used when he was doing the Spectrum program. Now, a lot of people will listen to music with headphones or with AirPods or on a speaker. The music that Advanced Brain Technologies has developed in the listening program is all meant to be used and listened to with headphones because of the way that it has been designed. With the use of headphones, there are these bone conduction headphones. There are two main benefits that come from listening. You get to listen to the sound through air conduction as well as through bone conduction. Being able to have two ways to listen to the music during every single 15-minute session, the body and brain are able to be stimulated even more than if they were just to listen on a set of speakers or through AirPods. Because it maximizes every single listening session, you will also find that you can see benefits from it, just like Paolo did, really quickly once you start listening to the listening program. So it's a way to maximize every single listening session in a way that helps you to not take a lot of time to do the listening program. Only 15 minutes a day is what people do typically. Now, another person who went through this listening program using the Spectrum program was Christopher. And his sensory sensitivities were very intense. He couldn't handle large gatherings, screamed if he touched grass or sand. A lot of you here can probably really resonate with this. Didn't sleep through the night until he was 2.5 years old because he needed to be held. He couldn't concentrate on simple tasks because his brain was in fight or flight because it was so overstimulated. And because of this, again, he was having so many meltdowns a day. Now, his parents had tried a lot of things. They had him in OT, PT, speech therapy, occupational therapy, social skills therapy, feeding therapy, and all of those were such fantastic supports, which the parents will tell you it helped so much. But at 40 hours a week for 3 years, they were pretty tapped out emotionally, all of the things. And they just said, how can we support our son through school when he can't handle 40 hours a week? We can't do much more than what we're already doing. They started looking into different ways. And one of their therapists recommended the listening program. The mom at the time, she said, while each therapy that they were doing contributed to helping Christopher, they were still missing his most significant deficit, which was his sensory processing disorder. So once they started TLP Spectrum, she said, right away, we saw a difference. Slowly, his grades started to improve. His teachers at school were asking me what changed. He was totally transformed and is a different kid than when we started at the beginning of the year. Now, this was when Christopher was in kindergarten, and at the beginning, towards the middle of the year, they were talking about having him repeat kindergarten because he was not doing well at all. And so when he started the listening program, it was really impactful because they saw such a difference. And it wasn't just his parents or his therapist who was helping him do the listening program who saw a difference. It was also his teachers. So after a few months, they all got together and they were able to notice he was able to explain things better than before. Virtually no more meltdowns. Instead of needing to repeat kindergarten like they had discussed, he advanced to first grade in the top percentile for reading and math recognition. I want to talk about a little bit about why that happened. When our sensory sensitivities, when a person's sensory sensitivities are dysregulated, or they're just constantly being overstimulated or understimulated, the brain is in fight or flight response, which does not allow for learning. It does not allow for learning. And so kids who constantly struggle to regulate their sensory sensitivities can have a really hard time in school. Because Christopher was able to have his sensory sensitivities reduced with the listening program, his brain was able to start paying attention and learning and taking in the information and listening and paying, I already said paying attention, which allowed him to show up as the student that he really was meant to be without all these roadblocks in the way. So it allowed his brain to function in a way that it was supposed to. And they said he completely skyrocketed because of it. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about what the investment would look like, what it looked like for Paolo and what it looked like for Christopher, because this is something that a lot of you are wondering, okay, if it works, what would it look like for us to be able to utilize this in our homes? So it's done in 15 to 30 minutes a day. Each listening session is 15 minutes, and so you can do up to 2 per day. A listener will listen 5 days a week, and each listening session should be done in a quiet, relaxing, and comfortable space. Now, for kids, that can mean, and free of distractions. For kids, that can mean that they are not looking at any kind of screens and they're not doing anything that's too noisy. And as long as they're not doing anything that's too taxing on the brain, it should be fine. So we ask that they don't read, but if they can, if they enjoy drawing, doing puzzles, doing Legos, playing cards, whatever it is that keeps them present, then that would be fine. And if a person is listening 15 minutes a day, it'll take 10 months to complete a program once. And if they're listening twice a day, it will take them 5 months to complete a program one time. And I say complete a program one time because you can continue to do the program and receive even more benefits. But I will say the benefits that are gained are a result of new neural connections that have been made. And so the benefits are lasting, which is really fantastic. Now, Christopher's mom at the end, she said, I believe the listening program needs to be in every school and every home around the world. If TLP could do this for our son, I can only imagine what it can do for so many others. We really hope that whether you're a therapist who is wanting to utilize TLP, particularly the Spectrum program, or to maximize the benefits that children get from your therapy, or if you're a mom or a dad or a care provider who has a person in your life who struggles with sensory processing and you want to support them in the best way possible and do this at home, we really hope that this helps you to understand how music can help, what it can look like in your home, and what the investment is, and what the benefits truly are, not just through the science and the case studies, which there are so many, but through the lives of actual people who have seen the benefits of it.